The Galactic Union had seen many strange and unpredictable life forms over the centuries, but none had confused them, quite like humans. On paper, humans were a paradox, emotionally unstable, technologically inconsistent, and physically fragile, compared to most advanced species. Yet somehow they had survived countless disasters, expanded beyond their solar system, and even negotiated their way into the Union without ever once backing down. Some called them brave, others said they were just lucky. Tired of the endless debate, the Union Council finally agreed on one bold solution: test the humans. They selected Calyx 9, a barren planet categorized as a Class 0 Deathworld, meaning it was hostile to all forms of known life. No air suitable for breathing, violent weather systems, a wildly shifting magnetic field, and living ecosystems that evolved by the hour. It was the perfect test. A team of 5 humans was selected for the mission. Dr. Amelia Voss, a calm and brilliant geologist; Raj Patel, an engineer with a talent for building things from nothing; Nia Carter, a systems specialist known for fixing broken tech faster than anyone else; Milo Jensen, a wilderness expert who had once spent 6 months alone in Antarctica for fun; and Ellie Tran, a quiet xenobiologist who rarely spoke unless she had something important to say. The 5 were briefed, warned, and reminded that survival was unlikely. Still, they smiled, shrugged, and said they'd give it a shot. When their dropship landed on Calyx 9, Union observers expected screams, panic, or at least confusion. Instead, the humans calmly stepped out in lightweight suits, scanned the area, and began setting up camp. Within hours, Amelia had found a stable plateau away from the acidic fog that rolled in every few minutes. Raj and Nia assembled a collapsible shelter, while Milo gathered samples, laughing softly every time his boots slipped in the soft violet sand. Ellie watched silently, noting that even the air, though deadly, carried trace patterns of microbial life unknown to science. In orbit, alien monitors blinked and rechecked their instruments. The humans should have been struggling by now. Instead, they had a shelter, a rough map of the terrain, and a small cooking station powered by solar cells. On day 2, a sandstorm rolled in with winds strong enough to tear metal. The aliens leaned in, ready to declare the mission a failure, but the humans had already dug trenches, anchored their shelter with flexible anchors, and covered it with a heat-dispersing tarp, made from their own suit's backup material. "We've camped in worse," Raj said through the static of his comms, brushing dust off his faceplate. As days passed, the humans adapted faster than the Union had expected. They used local minerals to filter toxic water. They adjusted their diet using protein packs and strange, high-starch roots Milo found buried beneath black moss. Even more surprising, they didn't seem afraid. They joked, argued, told stories by light from the storm lamp. Ellie taught Toast, a small, wolf-like creature with bright blue eyes and 3 tails, that stealing their food meant getting a stern warning, not a weapon. The creature eventually stayed nearby, guarding their supplies like a loyal dog. The aliens watching from orbit could only blink in confusion. No species had ever lasted more than a day on Calyx 9. The humans were entering day 7. When asked for a status update, Amelia simply said, "It's like hiking through a really angry jungle. Nothing we haven't dealt with before." The Union High Council began meeting in secret, unsure how to handle this unexpected result. Some called for the mission to end early. Others insisted they watch longer, certain the humans would crack. But as the days went on, something became clear. The humans weren't just surviving, they were learning, adapting, improving. Every problem they faced became a new opportunity. And from orbit, the aliens finally began to see what they hadn't understood before. Not every intelligent species fights its way through danger. Some laugh at it, work together, and build something even death can't quite stop. Calyx 9 hadn't defeated them. Not yet. And maybe, just maybe, it never would. By the 8th day on Calyx 9, the humans were already changing the rules of survival, and the aliens orbiting above had no idea how to explain it. According to every known law of planetary classification, Calyx 9 should have broken them, burned them with its heat waves, drowned them in its acid fog, or crushed them beneath landslides from the ever-shifting cliffs. But instead, the humans were not only alive, they were building things. Raj had modified their basic shelter using flexible crystal plates he had extracted from a cracked rock wall near the edge of a canyon. These plates, oddly warm and light reactive, formed a natural insulation when layered, turning their fragile campi into a stable, temperature-controlled zone. Amelia discovered that the jagged stones near the cliffside formed a kind of natural cement when mixed with a yellow powder found near a bubbling geyser, so she and Milo built windbreakers to protect the outer camp using only scavenged materials. Nia, frustrated with their flickering comms, broke down a broken sensor drone, rerouted its core into a signal booster, and tied it to a tall, flexible stalk that waved gently in the wind like a tree, giving them reliable contact for the first time. But it wasn't just the tools. They were watching the world, understanding it. Milo had been tracking strange patterns in the sand, circular ridges that appeared and vanished each morning. Instead of avoiding them, he spent 2 days observing and realized they were made by a slow-moving creature beneath the ground. He placed one of their spare heat packs into the center of a new circle and stood back. Sure enough, a soft, shell-covered creature the size of a melon emerged and sniffed curiously at the heat. Milo grinned and named it Snoot. Toast, the three-tailed predator, seemed jealous. Meanwhile, Ellie was sketching patterns in her notebook, watching how the trees changed shape depending on the angle of the sun. Each leaf reformed itself slowly, using water stored deep in its bark. She theorized the trees were partially photosynthetic and partially reactive, almost like a nervous system. When she spoke to the others about it, no one questioned her. They just added her discoveries to their plan. Union monitors were now running constant checks. One council member asked if perhaps the humans had been secretly given advanced tools. They hadn't. The humans were simply using what they had: broken equipment, trash, alien rocks, and sharp instincts. The observers became more anxious as each day passed. No species had ever survived this long. When a magnetic storm surged on day 11, causing bursts of static and knocking out several alien satellites, the Union believed it would be the breaking point. But instead, Raj and Nia were already shielding their systems with folded layers of the reflective crystal Amelia had found, and they used static discharge rods made from dismantled cooking tools to ground the surge before it could damage their electronics. They didn't panic, they didn't shout, they solved the problem. By day 12, the humans had cleared a path to a nearby cave that glowed softly at night, and inside they found stones that vibrated gently when touched. Ellie took samples, already dreaming of what kind of unknown microbial energy might be living. Inside them, Milo found a patch of fungus that, when dried, repelled the biting insects that swarmed at dusk. He turned it into a powder and dusted it over their suits. "Smells awful," he said with a grin, "but works like magic." Toast sneezed and rolled in it anyway. At night, they sat around their heater and told stories. Amelia talked about earthquakes in Chile. Raj told of building robots from scraps in his garage as a child. And Nia laughed as she described her first computer exploding because she tried to make it smarter with chewing gum and copper wire. They weren't just surviving, they were being human in a place designed to erase that. Back in orbit, scientists who had watched over 100 failed missions on Deathworlds stared at the data in silence. Calyx 9 was not supposed to be a test of cleverness. It was a test of endurance, of raw survival. But the humans had turned it into something else, a puzzle, a challenge, a game. When a sudden sinkhole swallowed one of their supply crates on day 13, Raj simply said, "Well, now we learn to make food from glowing moss." And they did. Amelia's tests confirmed the moss could be heated into a jelly that, when mixed with protein powder, became not only edible, but nutritious. Ellie took extra samples, convinced it had medicinal properties. Milo carved spoons from hardened tree bark. Toast begged for seconds. The Galactic Union held a closed meeting. The humans were displaying something none of their models could predict. Not just intelligence or curiosity, but joy. They were enjoying the struggle, learning from it, growing because of it. As day 14 approached, the camp looked more like a research station than a survival site. They had a food plan, a water filter, a functioning signal relay, basic weather prediction from Ellie's handmade pressure gauge, and even a system of marks made from purple sap that warned of shifting terrain. The aliens no longer asked if the humans would fail. Now they asked, what if they don't? And deeper down, a more uncomfortable thought began to take root in their minds. What if humans are not surviving the Deathworld? What if they are taming it? By day 15 on Calyx 9, the humans had already passed every limit the Galactic Union thought existed. But things took a new turn when Amelia and Milo discovered a thick jungle growing beyond a jagged canyon wall where dense fog always lingered during sunrise and sunset. The plants inside glowed faintly with shifting colors, and no satellite scan had ever detected this area before, likely because of the canyon's strange magnetic field. So the team saw it as a new opportunity, not a danger, and while the aliens, watching from orbit, expected hesitation, fear, or at least caution, the humans did what they always did. They made a plan, packed some gear, and walked straight into the unknown, with Toast trotting behind them like a strange, furry scout. The jungle was unlike anything they'd seen before, full of tall, soft-barked trees that pulsed with internal light and vines that moved slowly, as if they were thinking. And every step the humans took released a different scent into the air, some sweet, some sharp, some like iron. And Ellie was the first to suggest that maybe the jungle was communicating in some way, not through sound or touch, but through chemical signals. So she started collecting samples and tracking the smell. Patterns. Raj noticed that when they moved slowly and stayed quiet, the trees seemed to bend away just slightly, as though making room. But if they moved too fast or touched too much at once, the vines would tighten around nearby branches like they were warning them to stop. And Naya, always curious, took out a recording device and played back a soft melody from Earth, a calm, rhythmic tune she used for sleep back home. And the vines near her hand relaxed and unwound, hanging loose like tired arms, which made the others pause, staring in disbelief, because this wasn't just a hostile ecosystem, it was responsive, aware, and maybe even intelligent in a way no one had guessed. Milo spent hours watching a group of large, shell-backed creatures feeding on glowing mushrooms near a pond, and instead of running from him, they circled around and stared, clicking their jaws softly, so he mimicked the sound and tossed them a root he had in his pack. And after sniffing it, one of them pushed a bright purple fruit toward him, which he carefully took back to Ellie, who ran a dozen tests and confirmed it wasn't just safe. It was filled with energy-rich sugars and a natural chemical that helped regulate body temperature, and for the first time, they had found food that grew naturally on Calyx 9 and seemed almost shared. The jungle was changing them, and they were changing the jungle in return, not by force, not by technology, but by learning its rhythm, its language, even if that language wasn't words. And while the alien scientists watching from above scribbled notes and whispered among themselves, the humans kept pushing deeper, mapping trails, marking friendly zones with sap that turned blue when the air was safe, and using crushed petals to dye symbols on rocks. Symbols the jungle seemed to recognize because paths they marked stayed clear, and new growths avoided the stones. When a storm came from the west, stronger than any before, the team huddled under the thick canopy, expecting the worst. But the trees shifted, their leaves thickening, branches lowering, forming a sort of living dome that absorbed the wind and the acid rain before it could reach the ground. And in that moment, all 5 humans stared in silence, feeling something they couldn't quite name. Respect, maybe, or awe, or something deeper, something ancient. The storm passed, and the trees opened again like curtains being pulled back, and Toast barked happily, running through the puddles while Raj muttered, "They're protecting us." And no one disagreed. By day 18, the team had built a second camp in the jungle, this one surrounded by the cooperative trees and powered by bioluminescent fruit they hung from high vines. And at night, the place glowed like a small city made of starlight. They kept quiet logs now, not just about danger or survival, but about the behavior of plants, the temperature shifts, the bird-like creatures that dropped shiny stones near the camp like offerings. And Ellie theorized that the jungle was learning just as fast as they were, maybe even faster. Nia, ever the experimenter, created a soundboard of jungle noises recorded during the team's exploration, and when she played back certain combinations, plants shifted shape or opened wide, revealing seeds and moisture the team could use. It was communication, slow and strange, but real, and the more they listened, the more the jungle spoke back. Back in orbit, the Galactic Union's observation team had no answers, only questions, as every known rule about survival on Deathworlds was being broken daily by 5 humans with basic tools and a stubborn refusal to quit. They sent probes to double-check the data, but the jungle swallowed the drones, and they never came back. They debated sending rescue squads, worried something unnatural was happening, but the humans' regular transmissions were calm, even cheerful, full of strange stories about glowing frogs and vines that mimicked footsteps, and about Toast now, being followed by a pack of curious creatures who treated him like a leader. Raj started drawing jungle maps on walls with melted berry paste, and Amelia suggested they name the area, so they called it Whisperwood, because it never stopped, humming, clicking and breathing softly around them. Even the soil seemed to remember their footsteps, becoming firmer where they walked often, and softer where they hadn't yet explored. On day 20th, a large clearing opened unexpectedly, filled with spiraling trees they hadn't seen before, each one bending slightly toward the humans as if greeting them. And in the middle stood a tall stone shaped like a twisted helix, covered in smooth carvings no one had made. Not human, not recent, and possibly not even from this age. Ellie reached out and touched it, and every tree nearby lit up at once, glowing gold for a full minute before dimming again. The team stood in stunned silence, and Raj whispered, "I think we just found something ancient." And no one knew what to say, because suddenly it wasn't just a jungle, it was a mystery, a story waiting to be uncovered, and the humans, as always, were ready to read it, even if the letters were made of light, scent, and silence. And in that moment, as the sun set and the forest sang a slow, steady tune only they could hear, the humans knew something deep and powerful. They were no longer guests in the jungle. They had been accepted. By day 21, Whisperwood had become more than just a place. It was part of the team, like a 6th member that watched over them, responded to their presence, and even seemed to guide them toward new discoveries. But the peace they had found was suddenly broken when a flash of blue light lit up the sky, followed by a strange humming sound that made the trees shiver and the glowing moss flicker. And when the humans rushed to the edge of the clearing, they saw a sleek silver shuttle landing just beyond the canyon wall, sending clouds of dust into the air and frightening the jungle creatures into silence. Toast growled low, his ears flat, and even the usually calm vines near their camp retreated into the trees, like they sensed something was wrong. And that's when Raj's comms crackled to life, with a voice none of them recognized, smooth, cold, and clipped. "This is Observer Team E7 of the Galactic Union. We are here to assess the human experiment." Amelia's face turned serious, and Milo narrowed his eyes, because none of them had expected the Union to interfere directly. Not yet, not while everything was going so well. But before anyone could respond, 3 tall figures in pale armor stepped into view, wearing sealed helmets with glowing visors and speaking through translators that buzzed faintly with every word. "You are to report for medical checks and questioning," one said flatly, while scanning the jungle with something that whined like a worried insect, and the humans exchanged uneasy glances. This was not a visit, it was an inspection, and it didn't feel friendly. Naya muttered under her breath, "They think we're breaking their rules," and Ellie added, "or proving them wrong," which might have been even worse. They agreed to follow the observers for now, walking slowly through the jungle as the trees shifted behind them like shadows watching every move. And the aliens seemed unsettled by it, constantly checking their scanners and stepping over roots, with stiff, careful steps, clearly afraid of what the jungle might do. At the edge of the clearing, one alien paused and pointed at the spiraling trees and the carved helix stone in the center, asking, "Did you make this?" To which Amelia calmly replied, "No, it was already here," and the observers looked at each other before typing something into a device none of the humans could read. Inside the shuttle, the air was colder, the walls smooth and quiet, and they were told to sit in chairs that adjusted their shape automatically. But when the medical scans began, the observers grew more confused. "Your vitals have improved," one said, "despite the environment." And when Raj explained their modifications, their use of local materials, and the jungle's unusual cooperation, the observers fell silent, clearly not expecting such answers. "You've tampered with native life," another accused. But Milo just laughed and said, "No, we listened to it," which only made the aliens more uncomfortable. Ellie showed them samples, recordings, and sketches that proved the jungle was not just alive, but aware. But instead of being impressed, the observers seemed disturbed, as though the humans had touched something they were not supposed to. And soon it became clear. They hadn't come to learn, they had come to end the experiment. "This planet is unstable," the leader said coldly, "and continued exposure risks contamination of higher-level protocols," which made no sense to the team until Naya whispered, "They're afraid of what we found, or what found us." And before anyone could argue, the shuttle's engines powered up, and the observers gave a final command. "You are ordered to return to orbit for debrief. Pack only essential items. Departure is in 1 hour." But when the humans returned to their camp, something strange happened. The vines had grown over their tents, the glowing fruit they'd harvested had vanished, and the trail they'd used for days was now gone, replaced by thick, silent brush, as if the jungle had closed itself off, sensing the threat. Toast whined and scratched at the ground, and Amelia looked around in quiet shock, saying, "It doesn't want us to leave." And for the first time, the team felt torn, between duty and discovery, between orders and instinct. Raj tried to contact the shuttle, but static blocked the signal. And when Milo hiked back to the ridge to get a visual on the shuttle, it was gone. No sound, no light, just an empty clearing where scorched soil still smoked softly. Confused and uneasy, they waited through the night, but no message came, and by morning the forest had shifted again, opening a new path they had never seen before, lined with blue-leafed trees and whispering winds that carried strange tones, like music made by breath and stone. Ellie believed it was a sign, an invitation, or maybe a warning, and the team gathered their gear, unsure what they'd find, but unwilling to sit still while everything around them changed. As they walked the path, small creatures appeared in the trees, watching, chirping, dropping petals into the human's path. And when they reached the end of the trail, they found a wide basin filled with tall, clear structures that shimmered, like glass but moved slightly, bending in slow waves as if breathing. It wasn't natural, and yet it wasn't alien in the usual sense. It felt old, older than anything they had ever seen, and etched into the base of the tallest structure was a symbol that matched the helix stone, along with lines that pulsed faintly when Ellie approached. She reached out, and a wave of heat and light filled the air for one heartbeat, and then the forest fell quiet, every leaf still, every sound gone. Raj grabbed her arm, pulling her back, but she was unharmed, only wide-eyed and breathless, whispering, "It showed me something. A memory, maybe, of another species that lived here long ago and vanished." And before anyone could speak, the jungle groaned around them, the wind rising like a voice, and the sky darkened with storm clouds that formed too fast to be natural. Lightning arced across the horizon, but instead of striking trees, it hit the ground in perfect circles around the basin, and from each point, columns of light rose up, spinning slowly, forming a ring that hovered in the air. The team stood in silence, understanding only one thing. This place was more than a planet. It was a keeper of forgotten things, a vault of knowledge, and maybe even a test far greater than the Union had ever imagined. When the storm cleared and the jungle returned to motion, they found Toast sitting beside a new carving in the earth, shaped like a human handprint, with a single line below it, pointing forward, deeper into the unknown. And Amelia said, "It's not done with us yet." And this time no one argued, not because they had to stay, but because they wanted to, even if it meant defying orders and facing whatever came next. Because they had learned the most important lesson of all. When the universe sends you somewhere it thinks you won't survive, it's not always a death sentence. It might just be an invitation to become something greater. By day 24, the jungle no longer felt like a place. They were part of it now, walking paths that formed under their feet, eating fruits that ripened at the right moment, and resting beneath trees that swayed gently to shield them from the sun. But none of that prepared them for what came next, because deep down, each of them had begun to feel something strange, like a quiet energy building in their bones, in their breath, and in the way they moved through Whisperwood. Amelia was the first to notice it when she tripped over a root, but instead of falling hard, her body twisted mid-air and landed with perfect balance, as if the jungle itself had caught her. But when she looked around, there was no wind, no shifting. Vines, just her own heartbeat, fast and steady, and something deeper, like her mind had already planned the fall and reacted before she even hit the ground. Raj tested his theory the next morning by climbing one of the tallest trees, higher than they had ever gone before. And when he slipped halfway up, he caught himself not with panic, but with clarity, seeing every branch and angle like a map in his head, as if his senses were sharper, faster, more aware of every movement and sound. Ellie, curious and calm, started testing blood samples and neural activity, and the results were impossible. Reaction speeds doubling, cognitive functions running at near supercomputer levels, and stress markers dropping to near zero even after days of physical strain and mental pressure. And though she didn't say it out loud, she wrote it in her notes. "We are evolving, or remembering." Milo, always the quiet one, had changed too. He could walk through the forest now, without leaving a sound, moving between vines and brush like a shadow, and animals no longer ran from him. Instead they came closer, curious and calm. And Toast followed him more than anyone else now, like he trusted Milo's instincts more than his own. Nia, ever the builder, had started shaping tools from roots and stones with an accuracy that seemed impossible, bending wood with heat and pressure that matched materials from Earth's best labs. And she didn't know how she knew. It just felt right, like the knowledge was already in her hands, waiting. The team gathered that night near the basin of crystal trees, sitting around a small flame that burned with jungle sap and gave off no smoke, and Amelia said quietly, "I think the jungle is teaching us, or unlocking us." And no one laughed, because they all felt it too, that strange sense of potential just below the skin, like their limits were being lifted one by one. But it wasn't just physical or mental. They began sensing each other's moods more clearly, predicting each other's words and decisions, not like reading minds, but like hearing the music of another person's thoughts and moving in time with it. And when a sudden quake shook the ground on day 26, they moved in perfect unison without speaking, grabbing gear, climbing trees, and guiding each other to safety like they shared a single thought. Afterward, Ellie whispered, "It's not evolution in the usual way. It's something older than that. Connection, instinct, memory, a hidden layer we never learned to access until now." And that's when the basin pulsed again, its crystal structures glowing brighter than before, and this time, when Amelia stepped near them, they didn't just glow, they hummed softly, rhythmically, like a song they had always known but forgotten, and a wave of warmth moved through her body, making her eyes fill with tears without knowing why, and in her mind, for just a second, she saw visions, not of death or danger, but of humans standing with other beings in places she didn't recognize, sharing ideas, growing gardens on dead worlds, singing into the stars, not as warriors or invaders, but as healers, builders, carriers of life. She staggered back, overwhelmed, and Raj caught her, asking what she saw, and she simply said, "A truth we forgot, that we were never weak, just asleep." And they all stared at the glowing trees, wondering how much more was waiting to be remembered. But even as they uncovered these gifts, they knew something else was watching, because the sky had started to shift at night, and new stars blinked where there had been none, moving slowly in unnatural lines, and Toast barked at the sky now, ears twitching with tension. Nia pointed out that Union ships often returned after a failed contact, and this time they might not come with questions, they might come with fear, or worse, force. But the team didn't panic, because the jungle had shown them something deeper, not just survival but purpose, and as they walked through the roots and trees, they realized what their true power was, not strength, not speed, not even learning, but adapting. Humans change faster than any species the Union had ever known, not because they were superior, but because they could see patterns where others saw chaos, hope where others saw threat, and connection where others felt fear. Whisperwood had not changed them. It had reminded them, peeled back the noise of their world, and shown them what still lived beneath. Unity, instinct, and something wild yet kind, something forgotten by most advanced species long ago. On day 27, a new sound filled the air, not from the forest, but from above, a low hum that carried heat and dread with it. And when the team reached the highest ridge, they saw 3 black ships hovering over the canyon, their shapes angular and cold, not like Union science vessels, but something else, military, armored, built for control, not curiosity. They knew what this meant. The Union wasn't just watching anymore, they were coming to shut it all down. Amelia turned to the others and said, "We have a choice. Go back and forget this, or stand here and protect what we've found." And no one hesitated, because they had already chosen. That night the jungle glowed brighter than ever, and the humans didn't sleep. Instead, they trained, not with weapons, but with awareness, walking blindfolded to test instinct, solving puzzles in silence to test thought, and learning to blend with the shadows of the trees until even Toast couldn't find them. The jungle responded, sending them clearer signals, offering fruit that boosted vision, vines that acted like armor, and mist that numbed their scent. And together, human and jungle prepared, not for war but for truth. Because if the Union wanted to erase what had happened here, they would have to face something they never expected: Not a threat of violence, but a display of harmony, of growth, of humanity's hidden superpower, their ability to become part of any world, not by taking, but by joining. And by the time the first scout ship landed and found the camp empty, the team was already watching from the shadows, not afraid, not angry, but ready, and the jungle whispered around them, not in fear, but in welcome. By day 30, the Union ships had been circling the skies for 3 days without contact, without landing again, just scanning, recording, and most likely trying to make sense of the silence below. But they couldn't find the humans, because the jungle had swallowed every trace of them. There were no footprints, no heat signals, no signs of recent activity, just thick trees, glowing plants, and the stillness of a world that had chosen to hide its new guests. And deep in the forest, the human team sat in the basin of crystal trees, calm, silent, waiting, not in fear, but in unity. Their thoughts clear and focused, because they knew this was not the end of an experiment. It was the start of a truth the galaxy was not ready to hear. Amelia stared into the pulsing lights of the crystal pillars, her fingers hovering over her wristpad, the final report blinking on the screen, still unsent, because no line she wrote felt big enough to describe what had happened, what they had become, and what they had uncovered, not just about this planet, but about themselves. And across from her, Ellie was writing too, sketches and maps of the neural trees and memory stones, trying to explain the jungle's living data web that responded to emotional frequency instead of physical input, while Raj continued testing his cognitive responses, logging reaction speeds far beyond human baseline. And even Milo, who never liked words much, had started keeping a small journal filled with strange poems and short thoughts that felt more like transmissions than personal notes. The truth was clear now. Whisperwood was not just a dangerous planet, it was an ancient intelligence. Not a single mind, but a network, a living memory field, and somehow it had reached into them and drawn out something buried deep in the human spirit. Instinct, unity, and purpose, and the result was something the Union had never expected. Harmony instead of destruction, adaptation instead of collapse, strength without violence. But the real shock came when the crystal trees lit up again on the fourth night and formed an image in the sky, clear and real as a dream. A glowing map of the galaxy, with hundreds of stars blinking softly and lines connecting them like veins. And at the center of the map was not this world, but Earth, pulsing slowly, and a single thread of light stretched from Earth to Whisperwood, showing a path that had never been charted, and a message formed in the center of the map, written in a language that was not taught but felt, and every member of the team understood it in the same moment. They came before. They failed. You remembered. And with that, the jungle shifted again, revealing a deep, spiraling stair made of vine-wrapped stone and flickering roots, leading far underground, farther than any scans had ever shown. And without speaking, the humans followed the path down into the earth, into a space that glowed with soft green light and held walls etched with carvings of beings both familiar and strange. Some like humans, others tall and scaled, some feathered, others shaped, like flame, and all were reaching toward the same spiral symbol they had seen before, the one on the basin floor and the crystal towers. In the center of the chamber stood a stone table, and on it a cube of light hovered, humming with slow, steady power. And when Amelia stepped closer, the cube responded, unfolding into a stream of data that poured itself into her wristpad in a language the pad had never seen before, but translated instantly into a message. This is the record. This is the truth. Carry it to those who forgot. Her hands trembled, but she nodded, understanding the task now. This wasn't a rescue mission or a survival test or a punishment. This was a seed, a chance, given not to the most advanced species, but to the ones still willing to learn. And she looked at her team and said quietly, "We're not just going back. We're going forward." And they all knew what she meant. The next day, the jungle opened a path for them, not the old ones they used before, but a new one lined with white flowers and humming trees, and when they followed it to the ridge, the Union scout ship was there again, hovering just above the clearing, scanning but unmoving, as if waiting. Amelia sent a ping, just one signal, and the ship responded, landing slowly, its side panel opening to reveal an empty bay with medical beds and scanning lights. But no crew visible, just silence and soft white lights. And when they stepped inside, their pads synced automatically, uploading everything from the last 30 days, logs, recordings, samples, and the ancient data they had been given. And the ship paused, lights flickering, like it was trying to understand what it had just received. Finally, a voice crackled through the comms, not from a person but from the ship's AI, quiet and unsure. "Is this verified?" And Amelia answered, "No, it's remembered." And the ship said nothing else. It took them back to orbit, slowly, passing through the atmosphere like a leaf on water. And when they docked at the Union's primary station, a group of officers in pale blue waited to greet them, expecting reports of damage, loss, or failure. But instead, the human team walked forward, calm, healthy, minds sharper than ever, and handed over a single data crystal labeled in human script. "We adapted." The officers scanned it and paled as the data unfolded. Neural shifts, biological enhancements, emotional synchronization, environmental harmony. And the final entry, written by Amelia, read, "The test was not of the world, but of the spirit. We did not conquer the Deathworld, we became part of it. And in doing so, we remembered what it means to grow." Silence followed, long and heavy, as the officers realized what this meant. Humanity had succeeded where others had failed, not by resisting, but by listening, not by changing the world, but by letting it change them. Word spread fast across the Union, whispers of humans doing the impossible, of a death world that became a cradle, and of a species long underestimated, now showing signs of something greater than intelligence. Wisdom. And somewhere in the heart of the Union's data vaults, a new file was created, locked under highest clearance, titled Humanity, Tier 2 Candidate, Adaptive Potential Confirmed, and in it, the closing line, written not by a human, but by a Union. Analyst read, "They were sent to fail, they chose to grow. This is not the end of the story, it is only the beginning."